Hey guys, Nick Smith here, and today's going to be part 1 in my new color toning series. Now, the reason I wanted to record this new series is because I did a color toning video that was extremely long early on in my YouTube channel, and it's still a really popular video on here, but I feel like my presentation style has evolved since then, and I can kind of cover things a little more clearly and concisely, and I think splitting it up into several different videos might be more beneficial to everyone, and it might be a little easier to grasp, and that way they'll be split up, and if you have one method you like, you can go check it out or again and find it easier. So the first method we're going to be covering is the apply image method. Now, this is something that I'm not actually sure where I picked it up, but I figured this out, and it was probably the most used method for color toning for me for quite a while. So I still use it every now and then. It's not my preferred now, but sometimes it just gets the results in a way that you can't get otherwise. So the way this method works is we're going to go ahead and create a solid color layer. And we're going to go ahead and pick a color here, and it really doesn't matter what you start with. You can change it later. But to begin with, I'm going to do something towards a yellowish kind of golden color. And I'm thinking somewhere about there is where I like it. And now we're going to go ahead and go to the blending mode here, and we're going to change this to soft light. And we can already see that this has made the image extremely yellow, which is, kind of the goal here. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and turn off this layer just for a second, and we're going to come up with what we want our opposite color to be. So the reason we want to choose an opposite color is because we're going to be applying tones to the shadows and the highlights. And by using two different colors on the spectrum, what it does is it kind of makes your eye see a different balance, and it's a little more pleasing. So the opposite of yellow is going to be bluish purple. But I went more for a gold kind of color. I was kind of more towards red, so we're going to be a little more towards blue. And I want to go probably somewhere in here, maybe up a little bit more. No, that's getting a little too purple for my taste. I prefer something a little more blue. So I want to go to a darker color because I want to actually enhance my shadows with this. So if you have it too bright, what happens is it lifts the shadows rather than darkening them. So we want to go with kind of a darker blue here. And now we're going to go ahead and change the blending mode to soft light as well. Now, it's going to look really strange now, but trust me, this will actually turn out quite well in the future. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and turn these layers off, and let's hold down Shift and select both and group them with Control G. And then let's name this Apply Image Color Toning. Okay. So now's where the fun part happens, and this is where we're going to actually start applying this as a color. So let's go ahead and turn on the blue layer, which I want to apply to my shadows. And let's back out just a little bit so we can see a tiny bit better. And now we're going to select the mask here. And the reason why we want to select the mask is this is where we're going to use Apply Image. So we're going to go up here to Image, and then down to Apply Image. And you can see I have a shortcut set up of Shift Control A. Which I'm going to use from now on. So I just hit that, and what this does is it takes whatever your layer is and then masks it to the highlights and shadows inside of the image. So by default, it's going to mask to the highlights, but if we click invert, it's going to mask into the shadows. So you'll notice as soon as I do that, it just immediately switches, and we notice that dark kind of blue-purple color start to pop up in the darker areas of the photo. So we're going to go ahead and hit OK now. Now, if we go ahead and take a look at this mask once it applies, because it's going to take a few seconds to process, but we're going to take a look at this mask, and we can do that by either hitting backslash, and it'll show like a red outline wherever it is, and the darker the red is, the more it's actually applying. But for this, what I like to do instead is if we hold down Alt and click on the mask, it'll actually show. So anywhere where it's white is where it's being applied heavy, and anywhere where you see it black is not being applied at all. So as you can see, there's a lot being applied right now. So I'm going to hold down Alt and click off the mask again, and that just makes it so that way it goes back to seeing this way. So I'm going to use my shortcut this time rather than the menu. And if you want to set up your own shortcuts, I'm going to do a video on how to do that soon. I'll put a card up for it right now whenever I make that video. It'll be in the upper right-hand corner, and that way you can go back and actually make your own shortcuts for this. But I'm going to quick use that, and if you don't have the shortcut set up, it's just Image, then Apply Image to get this menu back. And we're just going to go ahead and do it again. Make sure it's ticked to invert, and then hit OK. And now it's going to process one more time. And what this does is it multiplies the effect. So it's going to be applying it again and again. And the more we do this, the more it comes off of the highlights. So see, it just got a lot lighter there. And I think I'm probably going to want to do this at least one more time. And the more you do this, the more it comes off the highlights and applies to the shadows, and it just makes it a little more refined and selected. So we're just doing this several times, and I'm thinking I'm getting to a point where it's starting to get into the areas I want it to be. If I go ahead and hold down Alt and select, you'll see it's coming off the face a lot. It's only in a few little areas of shadow. There's none on the highlights on the elbows. And it's just barely there where the white of her shirt is. So I'm actually probably going to do one more just for good measure. And let's go ahead and run that. Okay, so now that we have that done, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and turn on this yellow layer. And we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to use apply image. So just for example, I'm going to go to image, apply image again, rather than use the shortcut in case you haven't caught on to where it's actually at in the menus. And now instead we're going to untick invert. And what that does is it makes it so it only applies to the highlights instead of the shadows. So now we're going to go ahead and hit OK. As we can see, if we were to turn on the mask now, it's almost like a regular black and white image of what you'd get if you converted the image to black and white. But it's where it's applying all that yellow. So I want to do this one more time, just so it's a little less strong. And let's go ahead and hit OK. And that's going to take it and just refine it the same way it refined the shadows and make it so it applies more only to the highlights. So now if we toggle this on and off, you'll see it's extremely strong. So what we can do is just as a group, we can go ahead and select this apply image color toning, and we can lower our opacity down to something like 30% just to give it the colors we want to give it. If we wanted to do it a little bit heavier, we can just kind of dial it up more and do like 40% here, which I actually really like the way that looks, or 35%. I really like the way that's looking at the moment. Now, if you want to, instead of doing it this way, what you can do is you can actually select each one individually and then fine tune it. So say I want the yellow to be extremely heavy. I could leave it at 100, and then I could just slowly lower down the shadows and only tone in the shadows the way I want them, which would be, for how heavy that yellow is, something like 60. But typically I don't like to go that heavy with my toning just because I feel that it kind of starts to look too overdone. So I'm going to go ahead and select yellow now, and I'm just going to lower the opacity again. And let's lower the opacity of the yellow to something like 50. So this is just showing that you can actually control these independently as well. It doesn't have to be together. So if you want to do less to the shadows, you can. And if you want to do more to the highlights, you can do it that way. Or say I wanted to do the opposite. Say I wanted to just have a little bit of yellow in the highlights, like 15. And I wanted to really make those shadows dark and really make them pop out more. I could put those up to like 65 here. And it's being really stubborn with my opacity slider. And you could do something more like that. And it's really flexible, and this is just an easy way to kind of mask in where you want your tones to be. And if we were to hold down Alt and just like, let me actually go ahead and put these all the way up. If we were to hold down Alt and select it, you can see this is where the colors are actually being applied. And it's kind of interesting to see that in this way, but it's what it would look like if we didn't have anything underneath of it as a layer. But this is really a fun and fast way to kind of color tone, and it used to be my favorite, and this is the one that kind of got me known. I used to have a lot of comments on my color toning when I used this, and I still get a lot, but it's like people are more used to it. This is a little stronger. I'm a little more subtle nowadays, but I still really like this method. I still use it every now and then when it's not enough using a different method. So hopefully this is able to help you guys today. If it was, please be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you're not already. Feel free to share this on any social media you see fit. As long as my work is being shared and people are learning, I'm happy. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.